I put her to bed. I kissed her goodnight. She was fine. Rosie Canis sits across from Detective Torres in the Crawford County interrogation room, her hands trembling as she repeats the same story for the third time. But something doesn't add up. The 24-year-old mother's version of events keeps shifting, and seasoned investigators know that when details change, truth usually follows. What they don't know yet is that this interrogation will unravel one of the most heartbreaking cases of child endangerment Arkansas has ever seen. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the small room where Detective Torres begins what will become a masterclass in methodical questioning. Rosie sits rigidly, her eyes darting between the detective and the door. Her story seems rehearsed, too polished for someone who should still be in shock. "Tell me again about putting Jane to bed," Torres says, his voice steady but probing. "I already told you I put her in the pack and play. She was tired from crying. I gave her a kiss and went to sleep myself." But here's what makes experienced investigators pause. Grieving mothers don't usually provide such clinical details. They break down. They struggle with words. They can't stop talking about their child's personality, their favorite toys, their last happy moments together. Rosie does none of this. Instead, she focuses on logistics, times, sequences, facts that can be verified or contradicted. It's the behavior of someone building a defense, not someone processing devastating loss. Torres has been doing this for 15 years. He knows that truth has a consistency that lies lack. So he starts with the basics, establishing a timeline that should be simple for any parent to remember. "What time did you put Jane down?" "Around 8:30, maybe 9. "And Jordan was where?" "In the living room, watching TV." The vagueness bothers Torres. Parents remember bedtime routines with precision. They remember the last book they read, the last song they sang, the exact time they turned off the lights. Rosie remembers none of these details about her daughter's final night alive. "Was Jane upset when you put her down?" "She had been fussy earlier, crying a lot. But she calmed down." "What made her fussy?" Rosie hesitates. For the first time in the interrogation, her prepared answers falter. "I don't know. Kids cry sometimes." But Torres catches something crucial in her voice, the defensiveness, the way her shoulders tense when discussing Jane's behavior. Most parents would elaborate here, explaining teething, hunger, or overtiredness. Rosie shuts down. Jordan Snick sits in a separate interrogation room down the hall, telling Detective Williams his version of that night. On paper, their stories should align. They were both there. They both claim to have slept through the night. They both say they discovered Jane together the next morning. But the details don't match. "Rosie called for me around 7 in the morning, Jordan tells Williams. "She was screaming. I ran to the bedroom and checked Jane's pulse. Meanwhile, Rosie insists she found Jane at 8:30 and that Jordan was already awake, making coffee in the kitchen. One of them is lying. Torres knows that drug addiction often creates desperate situations. When people are struggling with substances, their judgment becomes impaired. Their priorities shift. Their ability to care for children becomes compromised. But what he's seeing from Rosie goes beyond impaired judgment. Her behavior suggests active deception, careful planning, and complete emotional detachment from her daughter's death. "Let's talk about Jane as a person," Torres says, switching tactics. "Tell me what she was like." This is where most parents light up, even in their grief. They talk about personalities, about silly things their children did, about how much love they had for these little people who depended on them completely. Rosie stares at the table. She was 2. She was normal. The answer chills Torres to his core. No loving parent describes their deceased child as normal. They use words like special, funny, smart, beautiful. They share stories and memories. They break down crying, just thinking about personality traits they'll never see again. Rosie offers nothing. The breakthrough comes when Torres mentions Jordan's statement about checking for a pulse. Rosie's eyes flash with something that looks like anger. "He said he checked her pulse? That's what he told my colleague. Is that not what happened?" Rosie fidgets with her sleeves, wrapping them around her hands. Her leg starts bouncing under the table. These are classic signs of stress, but Torres has seen enough interrogations to know the difference between grief stress and deception stress. This is deception stress. Jordan doesn't know how to check pulses. He's not medical. It's a strange thing to focus on when discussing your child's death. Most parents would be talking about their panic, their desperate attempts at CPR, their frantic calls to 911. Rosie focuses on criticizing Jordan's medical knowledge. If you're watching this story unfold and thinking about your own children or grandchildren, you understand the horror of what investigators were uncovering. Cases like these remind us why we must always be vigilant about protecting the most vulnerable members of our families. Share this story with other parents and caregivers who need to understand the warning signs. Your awareness could save a child's life. Down the hall, Detective Williams is making his own disturbing discoveries about Jordan's snicks. The 28-year-old has a history of domestic violence charges, though never against children. His drug problems are extensive, including multiple arrests for possession and one conviction for selling prescription pills. But when Williams asks about Jane specifically, Jordan's demeanor changes completely. "That little girl was everything to me," he says, his voice breaking for the first time during the interrogation. "I know what people think about guys like me dating women with kids, but Jane, she was like my own daughter." The emotion seems genuine. Jordan talks about teaching Jane to stack blocks, about her favorite cartoon shows, about how she would fall asleep on his lap during movies. He provides the kind of specific, loving details that Rosie couldn't or wouldn't share. "She had this thing where she would bring me her shoes when she wanted to go outside," Jordan continues, wiping his eyes. "She couldn't put them on herself, but she knew I would help her. She trusted me." Williams has interviewed hundreds of suspects over his career. He's learned to read the difference between manipulative tears and genuine grief. Jordan's pain appears real, but that doesn't make him innocent. Back in Torres's room, Rosie's story continues to evolve. What started as "I slept through the night" has become "I might have heard something, but I was too tired to check." The timeline keeps shifting. Details appear and disappear. "What kind of something did you hear?" "Maybe crying, but Jane cried a lot at night. I was exhausted." Torres leans forward. This is the first time Rosie has admitted to hearing anything during the night in question. "How long did the crying last?" "I don't know, I was half asleep." "Did Jordan hear it too?" Another hesitation. Rosie's entire body language changes when Jordan is mentioned. Her jaw tightens, her hands clench. Jordan sleeps heavy when he's been using. The casual mention of drug use reveals something crucial. Rosie isn't trying to protect Jordan. She's trying to implicate him. But Torres has been watching her body language throughout this interrogation, and he's noticed something telling. Every time she mentions Jordan doing something wrong, she relaxes slightly. Every time she talks about her own actions, stress markers increase. In his experience, guilty people try to shift blame. Innocent people focus on finding answers. "Rosie, I need you to think very carefully about what you're telling me. A child is dead. Jane deserves the truth." For the first time during the interrogation, Rosie looks directly at Torres. "I told you the truth. I put her to bed alive and I found her dead in the morning." But her voice wavers on the word alive. It's a subtle tell, but Torres catches it. "What if I told you that Jordan's story doesn't match yours?" Rosie's face goes pale. "What did he say?" The question reveals everything Torres needs to know. Innocent people don't worry about whether their stories match unless they're coordinating lies. "He said you were awake multiple times during the night. He said you checked on Jane around midnight and again around 3 in the morning." It's not true. Jordan never said any such thing. But Torres needs to test Rosie's reaction to see how she handles being confronted with contradictory information. Rosie's response is immediate and telling. "He's lying." Not, "That's not what happened," or "I don't remember that." Simply, "He's lying." She assumes Jordan is intentionally deceiving police, rather than considering the possibility of miscommunication or memory issues. It suggests she knows there are lies being told and she's prepared to blame Jordan for all of them. Torres decides to take a different approach. Instead of focusing on the night Jane died, he starts asking about Jane's daily life leading up to that night. How was Jane's behavior in the days before she died? Normal. Any injuries, bruises, falls? Rosie shakes her head quickly. Too quickly. Kids Jane's age fall down a lot, bump into things. Was she clumsy? No more than any other kid. But Torres notices that Rosie won't make eye contact when discussing Jane's physical condition. In his experience, parents are hyper-aware of every scrape and bruise on their children. They can tell detailed stories about how each mark happened. Rosie claims to remember nothing. The interrogation has been going on for 2 hours now, and Torres can see Rosie's energy flagging. Her drug addiction means she's likely experiencing withdrawal symptoms, fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating, but it also means her defenses are weakening. Rosie, I've been doing this job for a long time. I've talked to a lot of parents who have lost children, accidents, illnesses, even crimes, and there's something about your responses that doesn't fit the pattern. She looks up at him, and for the first time he sees something that might be genuine fear in her eyes. Most parents in your situation can't stop talking about their child. They want to tell me everything. What made them laugh? What scared them? What they loved to eat? How they slept? What games they played? They want the world to know who their child was, as a person. Rosie remains silent. You've told me almost nothing about Jane as an individual. It's like you're talking about a stranger instead of your daughter. The observation hangs in the air between them. Rosie fidgets with her sleeves again, wrapping them tighter around her hands. I'm in shock, she finally says. People handle grief differently. It's a reasonable response, but Torres has noticed something crucial about Rosie's speech patterns. When she talks about abstract concepts, shock, grief, normal parenting, her voice is steady. When she talks about specific actions she claims to have taken with Jane, her voice becomes uncertain. Walk me through your bedtime routine with Jane. Not just that night, but your typical routine. I don't have a routine. She goes to bed when she's tired. Most parents of toddlers have elaborate bedtime rituals. Bath time, story time, songs, specific comfort items. The routine is often the most cherished part of their day together. Rosie describes bedtime like a chore to be completed. Did Jane have a favorite stuffed animal? Blanket? She had some toys. What kind of toys? Regular toys. Kid stuff. Torres realizes he's not interviewing a grieving mother. He's interviewing someone who barely knew the child she was supposed to be caring for. The door opens and Detective Williams enters. The two investigators have worked together long enough to communicate with subtle glances. Williams' expression tells Torres that Jordan's interrogation has revealed crucial information. Rosie, I need to step out for a few minutes. Can I get you some water? Coffee? She shakes her head. As the door closes behind the detectives, Rosie is left alone with her thoughts and the weight of her increasingly implausible story. In the hallway, Williams fills Torres in on Jordan's revelations. He's admitting to extensive drug use that night, but he's providing specific details about Jane that only someone who spent significant time with her would know. He knows her favorite foods, her sleep patterns, even which diapers she preferred. And Rosie knows none of those things, Torres adds. There's more. Jordan claims that Rosie had been increasingly frustrated with Jane's crying over the past week. He says she complained constantly about being tired, about Jane being too demanding. The picture becoming clearer is disturbing. While Jordan appears to have formed a genuine attachment to Jane, Rosie seems to have viewed her daughter as a burden. Jordan also mentioned that Rosie had been taking more pills lately, says she was nodding off frequently during the day, but then staying awake and agitated at night. This detail explains something that had puzzled Torres. Rosie claims to have slept soundly through the night, but people experiencing opiate withdrawal typically have severely disrupted sleep patterns. If she was awake and agitated while caring for a crying toddler, the situation could have escalated quickly. The detectives returned to their respective interrogation rooms, each armed with new information to test their suspect's credibility. Rosie, Jordan mentioned that you'd been having trouble sleeping lately. Is that accurate? She freezes. What else did he tell you? Again, the question reveals her mindset. She's not concerned about Jordan's well-being or his version of events. She's worried about what information might contradict her story. He's concerned about you, says you've been struggling with your medication recently. Jordan doesn't know anything about my medication. But Torres catches the defensive tone, and more importantly, he catches the admission. She doesn't deny struggling with medication. She denies Jordan's knowledge of her struggles. How much Suboxone were you taking that night? My prescribed amount. Which is? I don't remember the exact dose. Patients on Suboxone for addiction treatment typically know their exact dosage. It's carefully monitored and frequently adjusted. Claiming not to remember suggests either severe impairment or intentional deception. Were you taking anything else with the Suboxone? Rosie's leg starts bouncing again. Just my other prescriptions. What other prescriptions? For anxiety. For sleep. Torres knows that combining Suboxone with anxiety medication and sleep aids can create dangerous levels of sedation. It can also create periods of confused wakefulness where people don't remember their actions clearly, but it can also create situations where normal frustrations become explosive rage. Rosie, I want you to think very carefully about this next question. Is it possible that you don't remember everything that happened that night? She considers this for a long moment. It's the first time during the entire interrogation that she seems to be genuinely thinking instead of deflecting or defending. I remember putting Jane to bed. I remember kissing her goodnight. What's the next thing you remember? Waking up and finding her. Nothing in between? For the first time, uncertainty creeps into her voice. I don't think so. Torres recognizes the opening he's been working toward for 3 hours. Rosie, people who mix different medications sometimes have memory problems. Sometimes they do things they don't remember doing. Sometimes they react to stress in ways they wouldn't normally react. She nods slowly. If something happened that night that you don't remember clearly, now is the time to tell me. Jane deserves the truth, and you deserve the chance to explain what really happened. Rosie starts crying for the first time during the interrogation. But these aren't tears of grief. They're tears of someone who realizes their carefully constructed story is falling apart. I was so tired, she whispers. Jane wouldn't stop crying. She never stopped crying. Torres leans forward, but doesn't speak. After 3 hours of resistance, Rosie is finally ready to talk. I tried everything. I fed her. I changed her diaper. I rocked her. But she just kept crying and crying. The confession is starting, but Torres needs to be careful not to lead her. Any admission has to come from Rosie herself. Jordan was passed out on the couch. He couldn't help me, and I was so tired from the pills, I couldn't think straight. She wipes her eyes with her sleeves. I put Jane in the pack and play and tried to go to sleep, but she kept crying. It felt like it went on for hours. What happened next? I went back to her room. I just wanted her to stop crying. I picked her up and I was holding her, trying to calm her down, but nothing worked. Rosie's voice is becoming smaller, more childlike. I got frustrated. I shook her a little bit, just to get her attention. But she cried louder. Torres feels his stomach tighten. He's heard confessions like this before, and they rarely end with minor actions. Then what happened, Rosie? I don't remember exactly. I was holding her and she was crying and I lost it. I threw her back down in the pack and play, hard. The admission hangs in the air like a physical presence. After 3 hours of denials, Rosie has finally acknowledged harming her daughter. Did Jane stop crying after that? Rosie nods, fresh tears streaming down her face. She stopped crying. She got really quiet. I thought maybe she was finally going to sleep. But you didn't check on her. I was scared to look. I went back to bed and tried to sleep. I kept telling myself she was fine. The confession continues to unfold as Torres carefully guides Rosie through the events she's been hiding for 3 days. When did you realize something was wrong? In the morning. She was too quiet. She's never that quiet in the morning. What did you do? I looked in the pack and play and she wasn't moving. She was just lying there. Did you try to help her? I called for Jordan. I didn't know what to do. The story that emerges is tragically common in cases involving parental substance abuse. An exhausted, impaired caregiver reaches a breaking point with a crying child. A moment of violence that seems minor in their altered state has devastating consequences they don't immediately understand. But what makes Rosie's case particularly disturbing is what happened after she realized Jane was hurt. Why didn't you call 911 immediately? I was scared. I thought maybe she was just sleeping deeply. I thought maybe if I waited she would wake up normal. How long did you wait? I don't know. A few hours maybe. The admission reveals the truly heinous nature of Rosie's actions. Even after realizing her daughter was unresponsive, she chose to protect herself rather than seek immediate medical help. In cases like this, every minute matters. Children's bodies can sometimes recover from traumatic injuries if they receive immediate medical intervention. Rosie stole those crucial hours from her daughter. What changed your mind about calling for help? Jordan woke up and found us in the bedroom. He said we had to call 911. Did you tell Jordan what had happened? Rosie shakes her head. I told him I found her like that. He believed me. The final pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Jordan's genuine grief and his detailed knowledge of Jane make sense now. He truly loved this child and believed her death was a tragic accident. His conflicting statements weren't attempts to deceive police. They were the confused recollections of someone trying to make sense of an incomprehensible tragedy. Meanwhile, Rosie spent 3 days constructing an elaborate lie designed to protect herself, even as investigators worked tirelessly to find justice for her daughter. Torres looks across the table at this young woman who threw away her child's life in a moment of drug-fueled rage, then spent days lying about it to save herself. Rosie, I need you to understand the seriousness of what you're telling me. You're confessing to causing your daughter's death and then failing to get her medical help that might have saved her life. She nods through her tears. I know I messed up. But even now, in her confession, Rosie minimizes her actions. Messed up is what you say when you forget to pay a bill or miss an appointment. It's not language appropriate for killing your child and covering it up. The interrogation concludes with Rosie providing a written statement detailing her confession. Torres ensures that every detail is documented precisely, knowing that this confession will be crucial in securing justice for Jane. But as satisfying as it is to break through Rosie's lies and obtain the truth, Torres knows that no confession can bring back a 2-year-old girl who deserved protection, love, and care from the people she trusted most. Jordan Snicks was released after his interrogation confirmed his innocence in Jane's death. Despite his own struggles with addiction and legal troubles, he had been the only adult in that house who truly cared for Jane's well-being. The tragedy highlights the complex dynamics often present in cases of child abuse. Sometimes the biological parent poses the greatest danger, while other adults in the child's life are actually protective figures. Rosie Canis was charged with second-degree murder and child endangerment. During her trial, the complete story of Jane's final night emerged, painting a picture of a mother so consumed by her own addiction that she viewed her daughter's needs as an inconvenience. The prosecution argued that Rosie's actions represented the ultimate betrayal of parental responsibility. Not only did she harm her child in a moment of rage, but she then prioritized her own freedom over Jane's life by delaying medical care. Defense attorneys attempted to argue that Rosie's drug addiction diminished her capacity to understand the seriousness of her actions. They portrayed her as a sick woman who needed treatment, not punishment. But the jury saw through these arguments. Rosie's elaborate lies, her lack of genuine grief, and her continued attempts to blame Jordan demonstrated a clear understanding of right and wrong. She had simply chosen wrong repeatedly over the course of 3 days. The most damning evidence came from Rosie's own confession. Her detailed account of constructing alibis and coordinating stories showed a calculating mind, not an impaired one. Parents watching this case unfold understand the horror of what Jane experienced in her final hours. A child's trust in their caregiver is absolute. They depend on us for everything, including protection from harm. When that sacred trust is betrayed, it represents one of the most fundamental violations of human responsibility. Rosie Canis was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The judge noted that while addiction might explain her actions, it could not excuse them. Every parent faces moments of frustration and exhaustion, the judge said during sentencing. The difference between good parents and criminal parents is what they choose to do in those moments. Jane would have turned 3 years old 2 months after her mother's conviction. She never got the chance to start preschool, to learn to ride a bike, or to experience any of the milestones that should define a child's early years. Her short life serves as a reminder that protecting children requires constant vigilance from all adults in their lives. Teachers, neighbors, family members, and community members all have a role to play in recognizing signs of abuse and speaking up when something doesn't seem right. If you're a parent or grandparent watching this story, consider sharing it with other caregivers in your life. Understanding the warning signs of child abuse and knowing how to report suspicious situations could literally save a life. The investigation that brought justice for Jane demonstrates the skill and dedication of law enforcement professionals who specialize in these heartbreaking cases. Detective Torres's patient, methodical approach to breaking down Rosie's lies shows why proper interrogation techniques are so crucial in protecting children. These professionals see the worst of human behavior, but they also represent the best of human commitment to justice and protection of the innocent. Subscribe to see more cases where dedicated investigators and prosecutors work tirelessly to ensure that children like Jane receive the justice they deserve. Each story shared helps create awareness that could prevent future tragedies and protect the most vulnerable members of our communities.